No, the Tennessee Titans should not trade for TJ Watt. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Roland, Titans fans. Today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On today's show, we're going to look at a potential trade for TJ Watt and why, once again, I am here to tell you it makes zero sense for the Tennessee Titans. Also, we'll look at the top 3 trade options currently on the Tennessee Titans. And obviously, we're going to talk about the tight ends and Will Levis. Then I'm going to tell you some guys who may not be shockers that they get cut during training camp, but it would be somewhat of a surprise. So going through some top 3s on today's show. Before we dive into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. On tomorrow's show, we're going to look at kind of some big picture things for the Titans. We're going to look at the schedule a little bit more later this week. And then next week, I'm going to start the week with my all-time Tennessee Titans offense and defense. Can't wait to get into all of that with you guys as we have finally reached July, which means football will be back this month. Now, with all that being said, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins had a massive trade on Monday that, this time of year is going to create massive buzz, massive headlines, because quite frankly, there isn't a lot of other things going on in the NFL world right now. So when you have a big time move with all of those pieces going, obviously everyone's attention is going to go to there. But for the Titans and for Titans fans, more on the nose, the move by the Steelers for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith actually created the domino story of what's going to happen with TJ Watt now. And we're hearing that the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe are uncertain about paying TJ Watt. He's going to be looking at getting $40 million per year going forward with where the salary cap is right now. We just saw Max Crosby get a big-time extension. We saw Myles Garrett get a big-time extension as well. So TJ Watt wants his money. Now, from the Steelers' perspective, they should pay TJ Watt. He's been the foundation of their team for years and years now. The best player on their team for quite some time. He deserves his money, and I think he's worth the money. So the Steelers should pay TJ Watt. But you know who shouldn't? The Tennessee Titans. This is the same conversation that we had about Trey Hendrickson too. And I'm going to say the same exact thing about Trey Hendrickson or about TJ Watt that I said about Trey Hendrickson. It makes no sense for where the Tennessee Titans are at right now in their process as a team. What I would compare it to is phases of the moon. Like the moon goes through phases, right? I don't know exactly how it starts. If it starts full and then it goes all the way, where one half of the moon is showing the waning crescent, the waxing gibbous, all those different things that you learn in science class that you forget by the time you become an adult. Well, some of us do. But the point is, teams go in phases in the NFL. And where the Tennessee Titans are at right now, in my opinion, is phase 1. They are at the beginning, okay? They need to build their team out the rest of the way. What you don't do when you're the Titans and you're in the infancy, you're in the early baby stages of your new era of Tennessee Titans football. What you don't do right now is go out and trade high-end draft capital that you need to add young players to your team in future drafts that will probably be pretty decent picks. It's not like the Titans are going to go crazy this year and, be a final 8 team or something. I mean, I guess they could, but I'm not banking on that. So the Titans are going to have good picks. Are you going to give up multiple day 2 picks to get TJ Watt and then also pay him $40 million per year when he's 31 years old? Where you're going to give TJ Watt a 3-year extension? Is that the plan? Like, it doesn't make any sense, okay? And I respect the pushback. The easy, immediate pushback on this is, I want good players on my football team. TJ Watt is one of the best football players in the NFL, a top 5 edge rusher, even with a down year last year. I want that on my football team. And I respect that. I want good players on my football team too. Like, if the Titans could trade a 7th-round pick and pay TJ Watt $20 million a year, then sure, let's rock. That's not that punitive in the future. But this football team is, again, at the early stages of what the version of them is going to be. This is more of the DeMarco Murray years of the Titans. This is 2016, 2017, all right? This isn't 2019. This isn't the 2019 Titans that had Taylor Lewan in the first round and then got Jack Conklin and drafted Kevin Byard and Derrick Henry and built the team and then dropped a quarterback in that made it all make sense. That's not where this team is at in their phases, all right? This team is early on. So if the Titans go out, here's what I'll say to you. If the Titans go out this year and get close to the playoffs, if the Titans win 8 games and get close to the playoffs, if, God forbid, the Tennessee Titans do make the playoffs, they have a massive turnaround. They go full-on Washington Commanders and are awesome. Then this time next year would be the time to make a move like this. This time next year is when we should be thinking about trade for Trey Hendrickson, trade for blah, blah, blah. What the Titans need to do is they need to go through this season, prove that this team is worthy to build around. The players have to prove that. And then you go through free agency, you use your cap space to play smart and add pieces that you need. You go through another NFL draft cycle where you add 9 to 10 young players. And then this time next year, you look at who wants a new contract, who's unhappy with their team. You look at the Trey Hendricksons, DK Metcalfs, TJ Watts, Jalen Ramseys, like not those players specifically to say, but think about the A.J. Brown trade for the Eagles. I'm not saying that the Titans should never do these kinds of things, but I'm saying this year is not the year to do that. Right now is not the time to do that. Let's go through this season and see what happens. And if they prove that, hey, it's time to go all in, then the Titans should do that, okay? But we got to see that first before the Titans start making those bets now. And you need players that do fit with your timeline. So you have to make sure that you know what your timeline actually is. If the Titans come out this year and they're not good again and Brian Callahan gets fired, well, then you can bump that for another year. You know what I mean? The Titans need to add good players, but at the end of the day, they need players that are on the same timeline as Cam Ward. And TJ Watt, who is 31 years old and will be 34 in 3 years, is not on Cam Ward's timeline. So it makes zero sense for the Titans to do something like that right now. If they prove that they're worthy of a move like that, then we do that this time next year. Okay? So that's my view on it. Let me know your thoughts on if the Titans should go get TJ Watt. Now I want to talk about some players who I think realistically could be traded. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, folks. Why not make it just a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburnt at the beach. I love using FanDuel. Number one, it's incredibly easy to use, fast to pay out. It makes every regular season game a must-watch event. But also, what I like about FanDuel is they have new promotions every single day, fun ways to bet, always keeps it interesting. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, talking some trades. All right, everybody wanted to talk about TJ Watt. The Titans should get I've seen it everywhere, all over socials, blah, blah, blah. I told you, I don't think it makes any sense for the Titans right now. But there was another trade conversation that took place over the last 24 to 48 hours, depending on when you're listening to this, that I thought was very interesting, and it had to do with the Titans tight ends, because the Miami Dolphins were looking for a new starting tight end after they traded Jonnu Smith to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we know that the Dolphins have traded for Darren Waller. So the Titans aren't trading either of their tight ends to the Miami Dolphins. They went out and got Darren Waller out of retirement, which good luck with that, Miami. But his agent, man, what a great move by him to fool the Dolphins into doing that. But I think it's still worthy to have this conversation about the Titans tight ends who, if we make a top three trade candidates on the Titans, top three players I think could be traded, the tight ends have to be a part of that conversation. Now, before I dive in, thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Tennessee Titans content for free all year round. Get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But Chig Okonkwo was the guy who made the most sense. Chig Okonkwo's skill set is the most similar to Jonnu Smith's. It's kind of eerily similar as Titans fans, if you're honest. But I think there's a problem here. And the problem is, what could the Titans even get for Chig Okonkwo? What would even be the compensation for that? Let's say they do it. Were they going to get a 6th round pick? Maybe a 5th at best. Now, look, if you want to say a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, sure, I would do that. I would trade Chig Okonkwo. I keep wanting to say Jonnu Smith. I keep wanting to say I would trade Jonnu Smith because now it's on my brain. But I would trade Chig Okonkwo for a 3rd round pick. Absolutely. Okay? Absolutely. No questions. But the Titans aren't getting a 3rd round pick for Chig Okonkwo. That's not happening. So let's be realistic for 1 second. If the Titans are going to get a 6th round pick for Chig Okonkwo, and I think that'd be at best, how is that 6th round pick in 2026, or the 6th round pick, God forbid it be in 2027, how is that realistically more useful to the Titans than Chig Okonkwo as a player this year? Look at the tight end group. David Martin Robinson, I have high hopes for him, but can't count on that. Josh Whyle has been a disappointment since he was drafted 2 years ago. Gunnar Helm is a rook. I'm high on Gunnar Helm. I think he's going to be the starter. But what if he gets hurt? What's the Titans' tight end depth now? So, in theory, Chig Okonkwo makes the most sense. He's on the last year of his contract. He's a decent player who's not an absolute bum. You know what I mean? I almost did it. See, I said Jonnu. Chig is a solid player. I saw somebody replying to me on Twitter trying to say the reality is Chig Okonkwo sucks. Like, internet brain is what I call it. A lot of people on the internet only have 2 views. Either you're amazing or you suck. It's either great or trash. There is no in between anymore. There are a lot of things in life that I think we have lost the middle ground of. Jonnu, see, I'm doing it again. Chig Okonkwo is just a good role player. He's a good tight end too. He's like 500 yards, 40 catches, and a couple touchdowns every year. No, he's not a bona fide number 1 tight end star, but that's a solid role player. Pretending that a guy like Chig Okonkwo sucks is internet brain to the max. He doesn't suck. Like, Josh Whyle sucks. You know what I mean? That is sucking, okay? Chig Okonkwo is a solid role player in the NFL. And if he were a true tight end 2 with a true tight end 1 on the roster, Chig Okonkwo would be one of the top tight end 2s in the entire NFL. So, Chig has some value because he's a decent role player, but it's not enough to give the Titans something that's going to be more valuable than helping Cam Ward in 2025. We got to get the best out of Cam Ward, all right? And is having an extra 6th-round pick in 2026? Right now, if we get into the trade deadline in this season and the Titans are 2-6, sure, we already have our answers. Chig Okonkwo isn't going to help at all. But for right now, why would I give up Chig Okonkwo for a 6th-round draft pick? Why would I do that? For what? Here's another thing to consider. Excuse me. I'm getting over it, though. Thank you for those who fought with me. But if Chig Okonkwo leaves after the season in free agency, and he's going to get a tight end 2 contract, probably worth $5 to $8 million a season for 2 years. He'll get a 2-year, $16, $17, $18 million deal, some of that kind. That's going to potentially get the Tennessee Titans a late-round comp pick. So I would rather have Chig Okonkwo on the team to see if he can help Cam Ward and make plays and make the team better, while also providing tight end depth, and then potentially still netting the Titans a compensatory pick in 2027. I would rather go that route than trading Chig Okonkwo now, getting an extra day 3 pick at the end of next year's draft, and then having to replace the tight end depth with David Martin Robinson, who we aren't sure of. And then Josh Whyle is your tight end 2. And then you have a rookie as tight end 1. Like, I'm not saying it would be insane to trade Chig Okonkwo, but the reality is it is very, very unlikely that the Titans get a draft pick that presents more value to them than having Chig Okonkwo on the team this year. So I'm out on trading Chig Okonkwo for a 6th or a 7th round draft pick. I'm just out on that. Doesn't make any sense. Josh Whyle is who I would trade. I would trade Josh Whyle in a second. But think, who would pay anything for Josh Whyle? It was just a really good tight end class in the draft this year. If you wanted a young tight end, you probably got one in the draft. No, but Josh Whyle is a guy who has 0 value in the NFL. I think that there's potential that things could go a totally different way with Josh Whyle. And I'll talk about that at the end of the show. But I do want to move forward to 2 other guys who I think are potential trade candidates. The tight end spot, I'm counting as one. See, we're getting later in the episode. I'm losing my ability to hold on here, folks. Thank you once again for hanging with me. But the other 2 guys are obvious when we talk about trade candidates. Number 1, it's Will Levis. Will Levis has to be traded. Will Levis is the true only player on the team. The only guy on the team, in my opinion, that realistically makes sense to trade. Because you could get something for him, like a 5th or a 6th round draft pick, because he's a young quarterback on a cost-controlled contract. I know some of you guys think that's insane, but it's real. And, you have Cam Ward. And if Cam Ward gets hurt for some reason, the Titans need to tank the season with Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle, not go to Will Levis to limp to 2 or 3 more wins. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. And listen, I know a lot of you are saying, well, if they play Will Levis, they'll tank anyway. We just saw that. Will Levis is a much better football player than Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle. I know some of you do not want to believe that, but it is 100% true. Will Levis is a much better football player than Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle. Sorry if that makes you mad. It's the truth. So you don't want Will Levis to come in if Cam Ward gets hurt. That would be bad for the Titans because we're all about, it's the same thing that happened to the Bengals. Joe Burrow's rookie season, he got hurt. They didn't try to play a quarterback to get them a bunch of wins. They played a crappy backup, which the Titans have 2 of them, to make sure that they got a really high draft pick. And then they got Jamar Chase. And then they went to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So if Cam Ward gets hurt, you don't want Will Levis coming in anyways. Because whether you believe it or not, he gives them a better chance to win than Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle. So Will Levis is the guy who still needs to be traded. And then the final guy to mention is Big Jeff. If we want to talk about the most realistic trade option, it's Will Levis. If we want to talk about the trade option that would get the Titans the most in return, it's Jeffrey Simmons. But again, to me, Big Jeff is a conversation for the trade deadline. If the Titans are awful again, that's when you trade Big Jeff. Or you get into next season before the NFL draft. That's when you trade Big Jeff. And I think that out of all of these guys outside of Will Levis, Big Jeff is the most likely to be traded once we get into the season and again to the trading deadline. But right now, there's no need to trade your best play. Let's see what the Tennessee Titans do this year before we do all that. So I'm open to some trades, but I think some of the trades that people are discussing don't really make a lot of sense for the Titans right now. But let's talk about some guys who could just get outright cut during training camp or after. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We've talked about some trade conversations. The Titans aren't going to trade for TJ Watt. They obviously can't trade Chig Okonkwo to the Miami Dolphins now after Dalen Waller went there, but there are some other trades we could potentially see this season, but Will Levis is the one that I would honestly think happens the most. But let's talk about some guys who could get cut, and I won't call them shocking cuts, but I think they could catch some people by surprise. And maybe even not that, but just cut candidates. Now, before we do, I want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer, moves are being made. Host Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. But number one on my list is Josh Whyle. We just talked about Josh Whyle and trade talks. Nobody's trading anything for Josh Whyle because, quite frankly, I think there's a chance he could get cut during training camp or at minimum when roster cutdowns happen. Now, I'm going to have Josh Whyle making the team right now. My initial 53-man roster, I had Josh Whyle on it. But David Martin Robinson has been more impressive so far this offseason. Josh Whyle has never taken that step forward to be who we thought that he could be as a red zone matchup weapon and a big-bodied wide tight end. And now they have Gunnar Helm, who has a very similar skill set to Josh Whyle, but just appears to be a better player. So I think that there's a chance that the Titans could look to only keep 3 tight ends on the roster, and Gunnar Helm, Chig Okonkwo, and David Martin Robinson. Even maybe Thomas Odukoye could be that backup wide tight end to Gunnar Helm if they don't want to keep Josh Whyle around. Now, I think you need to give him an opportunity. Let's see how he does. There's no reason to cut him unless one of those guys behind him is significantly better. But so far, again, David Martin Robinson might have been significantly better than Josh Whyle during the all-season practices. And if that's the case, why have him on the team? So I think Josh Whyle is a guy who could get cut, and some people could look like, wait a minute, why is he getting cut? But it could make a ton of sense based on the guys behind him. Another guy who I've heard could be a cut candidate is Tyler Lockett. I don't agree with that, though. I got to be honest with you. I don't think Tyler Lockett does get cut. But let me say this. If the Titans only want to keep 6 wide receivers, and they keep the 3 rookies, Xavier Restrepo, Alec Iomanner, and Chim Dike. Well, you have Calvin Ridley. You have those 3 guys. Van Jefferson has been impressive and is versatile and is way bigger than Tyler Lockett can only play the slot for the Titans. Van Jefferson can play everywhere. So if those 5 guys make the team and there's one spot open, would the Titans rather have Bryce Oliver over Tyler Lockett? Lockett may be a better player right now, but who's going to be the better player in 8 months? Who's going to be the better player this time next year? You know what I mean? Can the Titans afford to cut Bryce Oliver? He'll probably get picked up by another team on waivers. So I just think that if one of the veteran wide receivers got cut, it probably would be Tyler Lockett. So even though I don't think that it's going to happen, I'm going to acknowledge it as a possibility. But again, I don't think it's going to happen. Now, let me just say this name quickly because clearly I'm falling apart here, folks. Lorenzo Carter. Titans signed him as an edge rusher, really cheap, one-year deal. Lorenzo Carter is not a good pass rusher, but he's 6'5", 260 pounds, physical player who will set the edge against the run. If Femi Oladipo takes a step forward here and shows that he can be a day one starter, I think that removes the need for the Lorenzo Carter role because Femi Oladipo can now play that. And any snap that would go to Lorenzo Carter could just be given to Femi Oladipo. And then you have Arden Key, you have Draymond Jones, you have Jalen Harrell in there as well. A lot of different options. You could pick up guys off waivers. I just think Lorenzo Carter is a veteran who was insurance in case the Titans didn't get the edge rusher they wanted in the first couple of rounds. They did get Femi. Femi is a project player, but if Femi shows in training camp, he could be a day one starter. The need for Lorenzo Carter kind of fades, and it might be better to get a younger player in here with more potential that might be a long-term answer for the Titans as depth at edge, because Carter is not a long-term answer in that regard. So he's another veteran who I could see getting cut, where people will be like, oh, wow, they just signed him this year. They're cutting him, but it's all about Femi and his development. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans. I'm dying.